What if I told you that the strongest minds in history never try to appear strong? What if the very people who command respect, who make others step back in awe, who possess an almost magnetic presence, what if they achieved this not by force but by something far more subtle? There exists a paradox that most people never understand. They chase power by being loud. They seek strength by being aggressive. They demand respect by being forceful. Yet the minds that truly terrify others operate from complete stillness. Think about water for a moment. A raging river makes noise, crashes against rocks, announces its presence to everything around it. But the deepest parts of that same river, they move in complete silence. They carry the most power, they shape the landscape. They are unstoppable, yet they make no sound at all. Your mind works exactly the same way. Right now, in this very moment, you have a choice. You can continue living like most people do, with a mind that reacts, that jumps from thought to thought, that seeks validation from outside sources, that craves attention and approval. Or you can begin to understand something that will fundamentally change how others perceive you. The mind that terrifies others is not the one that shouts. It is not the one that argues or debates or tries to prove its worth. The mind that truly terrifies others is the one that has learned to be completely still. When you encounter someone with genuine mental strength, something inside you recognizes it immediately. You cannot explain it. You cannot define it. But you feel it. There is something about their presence that makes you more aware of yourself. Something about their calmness that makes you notice your own restlessness. Something about their silence that makes you hear the noise in your own head. This is not coincidence. This is the natural response to encountering someone who has mastered their inner world. Most people live their entire lives as prisoners of their own reactions. Something happens and they respond automatically. Someone says something and they feel compelled to defend themselves. A situation arises and they immediately jump to judgment. They are like leaves in the wind, blown this way and that by every circumstance, every opinion, every external force. But you can choose differently. The ancient warriors understood this principle. Before they ever picked up a sword, they learned to master the battlefield of their own mind. They knew that the greatest enemy was not the opponent standing before them, but the fear, the doubt, the reactive thoughts that could arise in an instant and destroy their focus. They practiced something that modern people have forgotten. They practiced the art of non-reaction. Non-reaction is not passivity. Non-reaction is not weakness. Non-reaction is the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. It is that gives you power. It is the stillness that gives you clarity. It is the silence that gives you strength. When you master non-reaction, something extraordinary happens. People begin to notice you differently. They cannot predict your responses. They cannot manipulate your emotions. They cannot push your buttons, because you have learned that you are not your buttons. Watch how most people behave in challenging situations. Their faces reveal everything. Their bodies tense up. Their voices change. Their energy scatters in all directions. They become completely transparent, completely readable, completely vulnerable. Now think of someone you know who possesses real inner strength. What do you notice about them? Their face remains calm. Their breathing stays steady. Their voice maintains its tone. They seem to exist in their own space, unaffected by the chaos around them. This is not a natural gift. This is not something people are born with. This is a skill that can be developed, a strength that can be built, a power that can be cultivated. The first step is understanding where real power comes from. Most people believe that power comes from controlling others. They think strength means getting people to do what they want. They imagine that respect comes from being feared or admired or followed. But true power comes from controlling yourself. True strength means that nothing outside of you can disturb your inner peace. True respect comes from being someone who cannot be shaken, cannot be manipulated, cannot be thrown off balance by external circumstances. When you develop this kind of mental strength, people notice immediately. They may not be able to put it into words, but they sense something different about you. There is a quality of presence that emerges when someone has genuine inner mastery. It begins with your breath. Right now, as you listen to these words, notice your breathing. Is it shallow or deep? Is it rushed or relaxed? Is it conscious or automatic? Most people breathe like they live, unconsciously, reactively, without awareness or intention. But your breath is the bridge between your conscious mind and your unconscious responses. When you learn to control your breath, you begin to control your reactions. When you master your breathing, you master your state of being. Ancient practitioners knew this secret. They understood that the person who controls their breath controls their mind. The person who controls their mind controls their emotions. The person who controls their emotions controls their actions. The person who controls their actions controls their destiny. This is why certain people seem so unshakable. This is why some individuals command respect without demanding it. This is why particular minds terrify others. Not through aggression or force, but through their absolute mastery of themselves. When you enter a room, what energy do you bring? Do you bring the scattered energy of someone who is at the mercy of their thoughts and emotions? Or do you bring the centered energy of someone who has learned to be the master of their inner world? The difference is immediately apparent to everyone around you. People can sense when they are in the presence of someone who is not seeking their approval. They can feel when they encounter someone who is not trying to impress them, or convince them, or win them over. They recognize when they meet someone who is complete within themselves. This recognition creates a powerful response. Some people are drawn to this energy because they hunger for the peace and centeredness they see. Others feel threatened by it because it highlights their own lack of inner stability. Both responses are natural. Both responses are predictable. Both responses give you information about the person you are dealing with. But here is what matters most. Neither response should affect your inner state. You see, the mind that truly terrifies others is not concerned with others' responses at all. It is focused entirely on maintaining its own center, its own clarity, its own purpose. This is the fundamental difference between force and power. Force requires effort. Force creates resistance. Force demands constant energy to maintain. Force is exhausting because it depends on external circumstances aligning in your favor. Power, on the other hand, comes from alignment with your own nature. Power flows naturally because it is not forced. Power sustains itself because it draws from an inexhaustible source, your own conscious awareness. Think of a mountain. Does a mountain try to be impressive? Does it demand respect? Does it argue with the wind or compete with other mountains? No. A mountain simply exists, rooted in its own foundation, unmoved by weather, unchanged by the opinions of those who look upon it. Yet everyone who sees a mountain feels its presence. Everyone who encounters a mountain recognizes its strength. Everyone who stands before a mountain understands that they are in the presence of something immovable, something permanent, something far greater than themselves. This is the quality you can develop in your own mind. When your thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of your awareness, you become like the sky itself. Vast, unchanging, untroubled by whatever passes through it. When your emotions are like waves on the surface of a deep ocean, you become like the depths, calm, consistent, unaffected by the storms above. When your reactions are like birds that may land on the branches of a tree, you become like the tree itself, rooted, stable, providing a place for life to happen without being disturbed by it. This is not about suppressing your thoughts or emotions or reactions. This is about changing your relationship to them. This is about recognizing that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not your reactions, you are the awareness that observes all of these things. You are the consciousness that witnesses the movement of your mind without being swept away by it. You are the presence that remains steady while everything else changes. When you truly understand this, when you truly experience this, when you truly embody this, your entire presence changes. People sense immediately that they are dealing with someone different. They recognize that normal social manipulation will not work on you. They understand that typical emotional manipulation will not affect you. They realize that conventional pressure tactics will not move you. This realization creates a fascinating response. Some people become more honest with you because they sense that pretense will not work. Others become more respectful because they recognize genuine strength. Still others become uncomfortable because they are used to dealing with people they can easily read, predict, and influence. All of these responses tell you something important about the person you are dealing with. But none of these responses should change who you are or how you operate. The moment you start adjusting your behavior based on others' reactions, you have lost your center. The instant you begin seeking approval or avoiding disapproval, you have abandoned your power. The second you allow external circumstances to determine your internal state, you have forgotten the fundamental principle of true mental strength. You are not responsible for others' reactions to your presence. You are only responsible for maintaining your own clarity, your own centeredness, your own authentic expression of who you are. This is perhaps the most liberating realization you can have. You do not need to manage others' emotions. You do not need to control others' opinions. You do not need to ensure others' comfort or approval. Your only job is to remain true to your own deepest understanding of what is right, what is necessary, what is authentic. When you live from this place, something remarkable happens. You begin to attract people who appreciate authenticity. You begin to repel people who thrive on drama and manipulation. You begin to create space for genuine connections while naturally filtering out superficial interactions. This is not a strategy or technique. This is simply what happens when someone develops real mental strength. But how do you actually build this kind of mind? How do you develop this level of inner mastery? How do you cultivate the kind of presence that commands respect without demanding it? The answer lies not in doing more but in being more. It lies not in adding complexity but in returning to simplicity. It lies not in learning new tricks but in remembering ancient wisdom. Every moment of your life you have a choice. You can react automatically or you can respond consciously. You can be driven by external circumstances or you can be guided by internal wisdom. You can live at the mercy of your thoughts and emotions or you can learn to observe them with the calm detachment of someone who knows their true nature. This choice is available to you right now, in this moment, with this breath. Through this awareness, the mind that terrifies others is not built through complicated practices or esoteric knowledge. It is built through the simple, consistent application of consciousness to every moment of your existence. It is built by choosing awareness over automaticity. It is built by choosing response over reaction. It is built by choosing presence over distraction. Most importantly, it is built by choosing to know yourself as the witness of your experience, rather than the victim of your circumstances. When you make this choice consistently, when you apply this understanding regularly, when you embody this truth naturally, you become someone that others cannot easily categorize, cannot readily manipulate, cannot simply dismiss. You become someone whose very presence suggests that there is another way to be human. You become living proof that it is possible to remain calm in chaos, centered in confusion, peaceful in pressure. This is why certain minds terrify others, not because they are aggressive or threatening, but because they represent a level of freedom that most people cannot imagine. They represent a way of being that transcends the normal patterns of reaction and emotional manipulation that govern most human interactions. They represent the possibility that you too can live from a place of genuine inner strength rather than defensive weakness. They represent the truth that you too can develop a mind so stable, so clear, so unshakable that others will naturally respect your boundaries, value your opinions, and seek your counsel. But this is only the beginning. Understanding the paradox of true mental strength is the first step. The real transformation happens when you begin to apply specific practices that actually build this kind of unshakable inner foundation. There are 4 pillars that support every truly powerful mind. 4 foundations that, when properly established, create a mental fortress that cannot be breached by external circumstances, emotional manipulation, or the chaos of modern life. Most people build their mental strength on unstable ground. They rely on confidence that depends on success. They depend on peace that requires perfect circumstances. They trust in clarity that disappears under pressure. But these are not pillars, these are crutches. Real mental mastery rests on something far more reliable. The first pillar is conscious stillness, not the stillness of sleep or laziness or avoidance, but the dynamic stillness of complete awareness. Think of a cat watching a mouse. Every muscle is relaxed, yet every sense is alert. There is no wasted energy, no unnecessary movement, no scattered attention. There is only perfect presence, perfect readiness, perfect awareness. This is the quality you must develop in your own mind. Right now, most of your mental energy is scattered. Part of your attention is on these words. Part is on what happened earlier today. Part is on what you need to do later. Part is on sounds around you. Part is on physical sensations. Part is on random thoughts that arise and disappear without purpose. But what if you could gather all of that scattered energy into one focused beam of awareness? What if you could learn to place your attention exactly where you choose, when you choose, for as long as you choose? This is not concentration in the way most people understand it. Concentration is effort. Concentration is strain. Concentration is trying to force your mind to stay in one place. Constant stillness is different. It is the natural resting state of a mind that has learned to observe without judgment, to be present without agenda, to remain aware without effort. When you develop this quality, something extraordinary happens to your interactions with others. People immediately sense that they have your complete attention when you choose to give it. They recognize that you are not distracted, not thinking about other things, not planning your response while they speak. This creates a powerful effect. Most people are so accustomed to partial attention, to distracted listening, to scattered presence, that encountering someone with focused awareness feels almost overwhelming. They cannot help but notice the difference. They cannot help but respect it. They cannot help but be influenced by it. But here is the key. Constant stillness is not something you turn on off depending on the situation. It is not a technique you use when convenient. It is a way of being that becomes as natural as breathing. You cultivate this stillness through a simple practice. Multiple times throughout your day, you return your attention to the present moment, not by forcing it, not by fighting with distracting thoughts, but by gently noticing where your mind has wandered and softly bringing it back. Like training a puppy, you do this with patience, with consistency, with gentle persistence. The puppy will wander. Your mind will wander. This is natural. This is expected. The training happens in the returning, not in the staying. Each time you notice your scattered attention and bring it back to the present moment, you strengthen this first pillar. Each time you choose awareness over automaticity, you build your foundation of conscious stillness. The second pillar is detached engagement. This sounds like a contradiction, but it is actually the secret of all masterful action. Most people engage with life in one of two ways. Either they become completely absorbed in outcomes, attached to results, dependent on circumstances going their way, or they become disconnected, indifferent, uninvolved, protected from disappointment by not caring at all. Both approaches create weakness. Attachment makes you vulnerable to circumstances beyond your control. Detachment makes you ineffective because you have no investment in excellence. But there is a third way. You can be completely engaged in your actions while remaining completely detached from outcomes. You can give your absolute best effort while accepting whatever results arise. You can care deeply about doing things correctly while not being disturbed by consequences beyond your influence. This is how masters operate in every field. The master craftsman works with complete focus and attention to detail, not because he is attached to praise or profit, but because excellence is his natural expression. The master athlete competes with total commitment and effort, not because winning is guaranteed, but because giving less than his best would violate his integrity. The master parent raises children with complete love and dedication, not because children will always make perfect choices, but because providing guidance and support is what authentic parenting requires. This quality of detached engagement creates a fascinating effect on others. They sense immediately that you cannot be manipulated through outcomes. They recognize that you cannot be controlled through rewards or punishments. They understand that you operate according to internal standards rather than external pressures. This realization changes how they interact with you. They cannot use typical manipulation tactics because those tactics depend on your attachment to specific results. They cannot threaten you with consequences because your sense of worth does not depend on external validation. They begin to deal with you more honestly, more directly, more respectfully, because they sense that you are immune to the games that work on most people. You develop detached engagement by practicing a simple shift in focus. Instead of asking, will this work out the way I want? You ask, am I doing this in the way that represents my highest understanding? Instead of measuring success by outcomes, you measure it by the quality of your effort, the integrity of your process, the authenticity of your expression. This does not mean you become careless about results. It means you recognize that results are influenced by many factors beyond your control, while your effort and approach are entirely within your power. When you focus on what you can control and accept what you cannot, you become unshakable. No external circumstance can disturb your inner peace, because your peace does not depend on external circumstances. The third pillar is internal authority. This is perhaps the most threatening quality you can develop because it makes you immune to the social pressures and emotional manipulations that control most people's behavior. Internal authority means that your decisions come from your own understanding, your own values, your own careful consideration of what is right and necessary and authentic. It means you are not swayed by popular opinion, peer pressure, social expectations, or the need for approval. Most people are externally referenced. They look outside themselves for guidance about what to think, how to feel, what to value, how to behave. They are like thermometers, constantly adjusting their internal temperature to match their environment. But internal authority makes you like a thermostat. You set your own temperature based on your own understanding, and you maintain that setting regardless of external conditions. This does not mean you become rigid or close-minded. It means you have developed the ability to consider input from others without being controlled by it. You can listen to advice without automatically following it. You can hear criticism without automatically accepting it. You can receive praise without automatically believing it. You filter everything through your own discernment, your own experience, your own deepest understanding of what serves your highest good and the good of those you care about. When you develop this quality, people notice immediately. They sense that normal social pressures do not work on you. They recognize that you cannot be shamed into compliance or flattered into agreement. They understand that you operate according to principles rather than preferences. This creates a powerful response. Some people become more authentic around you because they sense that pretense will not be effective. Others become uncomfortable because they are accustomed to dealing with people they can easily influence. Both responses give you valuable information about the person you are dealing with, but neither response should change your commitment to operating from your own center. You build internal authority by practicing the art of consultation with yourself. Before making decisions, before reacting to situations, before accepting or rejecting input from others, you take a moment to check in with your own wisdom. You ask yourself, what does my experience tell me about this situation? What do my values suggest is the right approach? What does my intuition sense that my rational mind might be missing? You gather input from others when appropriate, but you never outsource the final decision. You remain the ultimate authority in your own life. This practice gradually builds your confidence in your own judgment. It develops your ability to discern between helpful input and manipulative pressure. It strengthens your capacity to remain true to yourself even when others disagree with your choices. The fourth pillar is response mastery. This is the ability to choose your response to any situation rather than reacting automatically based on conditioning, emotion, or past patterns. Between every stimulus and every response, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom, your power, your opportunity to act from wisdom rather than habit. Most people live their entire lives without ever noticing this space. Something happens, and they react immediately. Someone says something and they respond automatically. A situation arises and they fall into familiar patterns without conscious choice. But you can learn to expand that space. You can develop the ability to consider, to choose your response based on what the situation actually requires, rather than what your conditioning automatically produces. This is not about becoming slow or hesitant. This is about becoming conscious. A master swordsman does not hesitate, but neither does he react blindly. He responds with perfect timing, perfect technique, perfect appropriateness to the specific situation he faces. You can develop this same quality in your daily interactions. When someone challenges you, instead of automatically defending yourself, you can ask, what does this situation actually require? Is defense necessary? Or would a different response be more effective? When you encounter frustration, instead of automatically expressing irritation, you can consider, what is this frustration telling me? What action would actually address the underlying issue? When you face uncertainty, instead of automatically worrying or avoiding, you can evaluate, what information do I need? What steps would move me toward clarity? This practice of conscious response transforms every interaction, every challenge, every opportunity into a chance to act from wisdom rather than habit. People immediately notice when they encounter someone with response mastery. They sense that you cannot be baited into reactions. They recognize that you cannot be provoked into behavior that serves their agenda rather than your own good judgment. They understand that dealing with you requires honesty, directness, and respect, because manipulation tactics that depend on automatic reactions simply do not work. You develop response mastery through a simple but powerful practice. Throughout your day, you create small says before responding to anything. Before answering questions, before reacting to situations, before making decisions, you take a conscious breath and ask yourself, what does this moment require of me? Sometimes the answer is immediate action. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is firmness. Sometimes it is compassion. Sometimes it is silence. But whatever the answer, it comes from your conscious choice rather than unconscious habit. These four pillars, conscious stillness, detached engagement, internal authority, and response mastery, they support each other. As you strengthen one, the others naturally become more stable. As you develop all four, they create a foundation for your mind that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. But understanding these pillars is not enough. Knowing about them intellectually will not transform your life. They must be practiced, embodied, lived until they become as natural as walking. The person who has built their mind on these four foundations becomes someone that others cannot easily read, cannot readily manipulate, cannot simply dismiss. They become someone whose very presence suggests that there is another way to live, another way to respond to life's challenges, another way to be human. They become someone who commands respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying the qualities that naturally inspire respect. They become someone who influences others, not through force or manipulation, but through the power of their example. Most importantly, they become someone who is truly free, free from the need for external validation, free from the fear of others' opinions, free from the burden of trying to control outcomes beyond their influence. This freedom is what truly terrifies people who are still trapped in reactive patterns, still dependent on external approval, still at the mercy of their unconscious habits. Not because this freedom threatens them, but because it shows them what is possible. It reveals that the limitations they have accepted as permanent are actually choices they have made unconsciously. When you embody these four pillars, you become living proof that human beings are capable of far more mental strength, emotional stability, and conscious choice than most people ever realize. You become an example of what is possible when someone commits to mastering their own mind rather than trying to control external circumstances. But how do you actually live this way? How do you integrate these principles into the messy reality of daily life? How do you maintain this level of awareness when you are dealing with difficult people, stressful situations, and constant demands on your attention? The transformation begins the moment you wake up. Before you check your phone, before you think about your schedule, before you allow the outside world to claim your attention, you take 3 conscious breaths. Not forced breathing, not complicated techniques, just 3 intentional breaths, where you are fully present with the simple act of breathing. This is not meditation. This is not a spiritual practice. This is practical training for your mind. You are establishing, from the very first moments of consciousness, that you choose how to direct your attention, rather than allowing it to be pulled in random directions. Most people wake up and immediately surrender control of their mental state to whatever thoughts, worries or distractions happen to arise first. But you begin each day by exercising conscious choice over your own awareness. Throughout the morning, you continue this practice. When you eat, you eat. When you shower, you shower. When you dress, you dress. You are fully present with whatever activity you are engaged in, rather than mentally racing ahead to future tasks or replaying past conversations. This sounds simple, but it is revolutionary. Most people live their entire lives partially present, always thinking about something other than what they are actually doing. But presence is power. Presence is where your strength lies. Presence is what others sense when they encounter someone with genuine mental mastery. When you arrive at work, when you interact with family, when you engage with the world, you bring this quality of complete presence with you. People notice immediately, even if they cannot articulate what they are noticing. You listen when others speak, not just waiting for your turn to talk. You focus on tasks without constantly checking for distractions. You remain calm in meetings, centered in conversations, steady in conflicts. But here is what will challenge you. Not everyone will appreciate this transformation. Some people are uncomfortable around others who cannot be easily read or manipulated. Some individuals feel threatened by those who do not seek their approval or validation. Some personalities are disturbed by encountering someone who operates from genuine inner authority rather than external reference points. This is not your problem to solve. This is information for you to process. When someone becomes hostile toward your calmness, what does this tell you about their relationship with their own inner peace? When someone tries to provoke you into reactions, what does this reveal about their need to control others' emotional states? When someone criticizes your self-possession, what does this expose about their own insecurities? You observe these patterns without judgment, but also without allowing them to disturb your centeredness. You recognize that others' discomfort with your mental strength is not evidence that you should weaken yourself to make them comfortable. The oak tree does not apologize to the grass for growing tall. The mountain does not diminish itself to avoid intimidating the hills. The ocean does not become shallow to make small boats feel more secure. Neither should you compromise your mental development to accommodate others' limitations. But this does not mean you become arrogant or dismissive. True strength has no need to prove itself. Real power has no desire to dominate others. Genuine mastery naturally expresses itself through service, not superiority. As your mental strength develops, you will notice that you naturally become someone others turn to for advice, guidance, and support. Not because you seek this role, but because your stability creates space for others to find their own clarity. Your calmness helps others access their own peace. Your centeredness reminds others of their own potential for inner strength. Your authenticity gives others permission to be genuine rather than pretending to be someone they are not. This is the real power of a strong mind. It does not dominate or control or manipulate. It creates conditions where truth can emerge, where authentic connection becomes possible, where people can drop their defenses and be real with each other. But you must be careful not to become attached to others' responses to your development. The moment you start measuring your progress by how others react to you, you have lost your center. The instant you begin seeking validation for your growth, you have forgotten the source of real strength. Your mental mastery is for you. It serves you by giving you the tools to navigate life with clarity, purpose, and inner peace. It serves others by providing an example of what is possible and creating space for authentic interaction. But it is not dependent on recognition, appreciation, or approval from anyone else. There will be days when maintaining this level of awareness feels effortless. There will be other days when it requires constant vigilance and conscious choice. Both experiences are normal, both are part of the development process. The key is consistency, not perfection. You are not trying to become someone who never has scattered thoughts, reactive emotions, or moments of unconsciousness. You are developing the ability to notice when you have lost your center and consciously return to it. This returning is the practice. This choosing is where your strength grows. This recommitment to awareness is what builds an unshakable mind. After several months of consistent practice, you will begin to notice profound changes in how you experience life. Situations that used to create stress no longer disturb your peace. People who used to trigger emotional reactions no longer have that power over you. Circumstances that used to feel overwhelming now feel manageable. This is not because your life has become easier. This is because you have become stronger. You have developed the ability to remain centered regardless of external conditions. You have built the capacity to respond wisely rather than react automatically. You have cultivated the skill of maintaining your inner peace while still engaging fully with whatever life presents. Others will begin to seek your counsel not because you advertise your wisdom but because your presence naturally invites honest conversation. They will trust you with sensitive information because they sense that you will not judge or betray their confidence. They will value your opinions because they recognize that you speak from genuine understanding rather than ego or agenda. But perhaps most importantly, you will discover that you no longer need others to behave in specific ways for you to maintain your inner peace. You no longer require external circumstances to align with your preferences for you to feel centered and strong. This is true freedom. This is real power. This is what it means to have a mind so strong that it terrifies people. Not through aggression or force, but through its absolute independence from the need for external validation or control. You become someone who cannot be bought, cannot be pressured, cannot be manipulated, cannot be thrown off balance by circumstances beyond your control. You become someone who operates from principles rather than preferences, from wisdom rather than emotion, from authentic choice rather than unconscious habit. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is not the result of reading about these concepts or understanding them intellectually. It emerges from daily practice, consistent application, and the patient development of mental habits that serve your highest good. But it is absolutely possible. Every human being has the capacity to develop this level of mental strength. Every person can learn to master their own reactions, responses, and inner state. The question is not whether you are capable of this transformation. The question is whether you are willing to make the consistent choices required to develop it. Are you willing to start each day with conscious presence rather than automatic reaction? Are you willing to practice response mastery even when it would be easier to react habitually? Are you willing to develop internal authority even when others pressure you to conform to their expectations? Are you willing to build conscious stillness even when your mind wants to scatter in 1,000 directions? Are you willing to maintain detached engagement even when outcomes matter deeply to you? The mind that terrifies others is not built through extraordinary measures or mystical practices. It is built through ordinary moments, conscious choices, and the patient application of awareness to every aspect of your daily experience. It is built by someone who decides that they will no longer live at the mercy of their reactions, their conditioning, their unconscious habits. It is built by someone who chooses to become the master of their own mental and emotional states rather than remaining a victim of external circumstances. It is built by someone like you, someone who recognizes that true strength comes not from controlling others but from mastering yourself. Someone who understands that real power lies not in forcing outcomes but in choosing responses. Someone who knows that genuine freedom is found not in getting what you want but in being at peace with what is while working wisely toward what could be. The strongest mind is not the loudest mind. It is not the most aggressive mind. It is not the mind that demands attention or insists on being right. The strongest mind is the stillest mind, the most centered mind. The mind that has learned to observe without judgment, engage without attachment, choose without desperation, and respond without reactivity. This mind terrifies others not because it threatens them, but because it shows them what they have always been capable of becoming. It reminds them that the limitations they have accepted as permanent are actually choices they can change at any moment. When you develop this kind of mental strength, you become more than just someone who cannot be easily shaken. You become living proof that human consciousness is capable of extraordinary development, that inner peace is not dependent on external circumstances, and that true power comes from mastering yourself rather than trying to control others. This is your invitation. This is your opportunity. This is your choice. The transformation begins now, with this breath, in this moment, through this awareness. Choose wisely.